Selected parts from the book One Life is Not Enough, written by Shri K. Natwar Singh. Part 8. My Days in China. After spending 2 days in Hong Kong, I left for the border town Shum Chun to take a train to Canton, where I spent a miserable night in a hotel which needs to be pulled down. Next day, on 28th June 1956, I took the train to Peking. I had a first class compartment to myself. On the side table rested a thermos flask filled with hot water and a packet of green tea, but no milk or sugar. I later became addicted to it. People in China drink vast amounts of green tea. I hardly saw an obese Chinese in my 2 year stay in China. The only book I had with me was Edgar Snow's classic, Red Star over China. It was the first book to make known the names of Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, and the great silent military leader Marshal Chu Te to the Western world. The book was published in 1937 when Edgar Snow was 26 years old. Snow was the only journalist to stand next to Mao at the annual parade. On reaching Peking's uncrowded station, I was met by a member of the embassy staff. My luggage was modest, one large leather suitcase and a small handbag. The overcoat I carried on my arm. The staff car deposited me at Sin Chai Hotel, where I later discovered low level diplomats, peripatetic travelers, and several intelligence agents to keep an eye on the diplomats were put up. Sin Chai was Spartan. That suited me. I was at the time a show off Puritan. The next morning, I went up to the almost empty dining room for breakfast. The menu was in Chinese. Just as I was beginning to despair, a lady wearing a colorful dress walked in and sat down 3 tables away from me. I could not take my eyes off. She was very beautifully dressed. I kept looking at her. Where had I seen her? Could she be Han Xuan? No, of course not. What would she be doing in China? Yet she looked familiar. I scribbled a note on the back of the menu. I am starving and cannot get my breakfast. Are you Han Xuan? If so, could you help me order my breakfast? As I fretted about my impetuosity, an answer arrived. Yes, I am Han Xuan. Come and join me. Thus began a friendship that lasted more than 50 years. Her novel, A Many Splendored Thing, published in 1952, became a world bestseller. It is one of the most moving and tragic stories of our time. Suyin wrote superb English. She helped me to some extent understand China. She took me to the Forbidden City, the Temple of Heavens, and the Beehive Park. She also reduced my ignorance of ancient and Maoist China. Her husband was Colonel Vincent, a Catholic Indian whom she met in Nepal. I got to know him and liked him very much. He was solid, steady, unhurried, a splendid listener, and non intruding. Suyin had an acute identity complex. Her heart was Chinese, but her head, after marrying Vincent, was Indian. The Chinese used her and she used them in return. She wrote a dreadful biography of Mao Zedong. It was far too reverential. I also reviewed her book, The Mountain is Young, for the Illustrated Weekly of India. She approved of the review and wrote me a 1,000 word letter on it, which I had not expected. The embassy was a 7-minute drive from the hotel. It was located in what was known before 1949 as the Legation Quarter, the exclusive preserve of European, American, Russian, and Japanese embassies. The only Chinese allowed entry were servants. On my first day at the office, I was introduced by Ashok Bhatkamkar, the head of the Chancery, to my senior colleagues I.J. Bahadur Singh, Panu Guha, A.R. Ram, and V.V. Paranjape. The ambassador R.K. Nehru and his wife Rajan Nehru gave me tea in the afternoon. No one was even remotely interested in me or knew what to do with me. Each morning, the ambassador held an officers' meeting and attendance was de rigueur. V.V. Paranjape read out important news items from the People's Daily and Ta Kung Pao. His choice of the news items was arbitrary. Since he was the only Chinese speaking member of the embassy, Ambassador Nehru's reliance on Pai, as we all called him, was total. A polyglot, Pai spoke Marathi, Hindi, and English besides Chinese. His mastery of the language was the envy of the entire diplomatic corps. He was Nehru's translator in his meetings with Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai in 1954. I have singled out Pai because he was an original, carefree, unpunctual, and slightly quirky. He fitted into no bureaucratic niche. One evening at his house, I noticed a few sheets of paper lying on the floor. These turned out to be the record of a Mao Zedong R.K. Nehru meeting. I handed them to Pai, who flung them onto his cluttered writing table. I was curious to know where the other sheets were. He asked me to look in his overcoat. I did as he said. They were there all right, but not in a very good shape. Was Pai a security risk? No. No outfit could use him as their agent. He was too outspoken and unpredictable. As I began to spend more time in our embassy in China, I read up on Chinese history. I bought and read the Chinese classics too, like All Men Are Brothers, translated from the Chinese by Pearl S. Buck, The Dream of the Red Chamber by Cao Huqin, and books about Hyun Sang and Confucius. I also met the greatest living Chinese novelist, Lao Shi. His book, The Rickshaw Boy, became a bestseller in America. The embassy also selected Dean Chang, a scholar and a dear old man who had seen better days, to teach me Chinese. I vividly recollect the first time I saw Chairman Mao Tse-tung. This was at a banquet for the Prime Minister of Laos. He wore a light grey baggy Mao suit. Other leaders, including President Li Shang, Zhou Enlai, and Marshal Chu Te, were in blue suits. Mao was taller than all of them. Mao was a thinker, a poet, a scholar, an intellectual, a revolutionary, a Marxist, and a ruthless man with an iron will. His knowledge of his country's history was deep and he reached out to history. No one disagreed with him. The power of his mind was second to none, with the exception of Lenin. Mao Zedong was transforming China, the lives of 500 million Chinese and their way of thinking. His aim was to produce a society which would be a model for all communist countries. He put an end to chaos, squalor, and corruption. The cost of this transformation in human terms was no doubt high, but no one had an inkling of this in the 1950s. It is only now we know that Mao was responsible for the murder of 70 million Chinese. One could, as a detached observer, complete an entire cyclopedia of suffering under Mao. Mao was a tremendous innovator and a prophet who made Marx stand on his head. It was the Chinese peasants, he said, and not the industrial class who would make the revolution. Indian delegations poured into China. The first was led by the communist E.M.S. Namboodiripad, who was accompanied by P. Sundaraiah and P.C. Joshi. The ambassador held a reception for them at which dozens of Chinese officials turned up. The CPI delegation met Chairman Mao Tse-tung, Zhou Te, and Zhou Enlai. P.N. Sharma, the well-known photographer too, was at the reception. He took lots of pictures, including one of mine. Later, I invited him to lunch at the hotel. He showed me a photograph of himself with Chairman Mao, Zhou Enlai, Liu Shak, and Marshal Chu Te. Sharma was in the center of the photo. I got to know him well in the years to come. He was a good but naive person, and his marriage to a Russian girl was a disaster. He gradually faded away and died in obscurity. In September came a delegation headed by R.K. Patil. It included a mix of personalities. D.K. Barua of the Congress particularly proved to be a ready wit. One day, he asked his interpreter, "Are these the Western Hills?" When she confirmed, Barua teasingly asked, "Before or after liberation?" He later told me that he was fed up with repeatedly being told that all good things were a gift from Chairman Mao after liberation. H.K. Malaviya, a senior member of the delegation, was impressed with Mao's China. According to him, the change that had been wrought about in the very humanity of China by Mao was nothing short of remarkable. However, he was unimpressed by the gramophone record refrain. To him, the party's propaganda machine was overactive and needed to be restrained. His other observation was curiously appealing. According to him, in China, they did not allow grass to grow under one's feet. Even though they did not mind that the grass grew on people's roofs. In India, Malaviya observed, grass was allowed to grow all over the place. On 29th September came the large delegation under the leadership of Lok Sabha Speaker Ananthasenam Iyengar. After lunch for the speaker, I rushed back to the airport for the arrival of President Sukarno, who was received by Mao Zedong himself. I broke all the rules of protocol and was all over the place taking photographs, including one of Mao from very close. No one objected. The security was unobtrusive but alert. They knew who I was and let me get away with my improper conduct. Chairman Mao stood apart from Chu Te, Li Shok, Chou Enlai, Sung Chingling, Deng Xiaoping, who looked even shorter than me. President Ahmed Sukarno came out of the plane in military uniform, medals, baton, and black Indonesian cap. The contrast between Mao and Sukarno was stark. While Mao was indifferent to sartorial elegance, Sukarno needed frills to impress, and impress he did. President Sukarno was an intellectual but no revolutionary. Nevertheless, he had his uses. At the banquet Chairman Mao gave for Sukarno, he held forth for 50 minutes. Mao spoke for 5 minutes only. On 1st October, the D-Day, it poured from morning till noon. The parade, spectacular in spite of the rain, lasted 4 hours. The diplomats' enclosure was right of the Tiananmen Gate. On the balcony sat Mao, Sukarno, and the Nepali Prime Minister, as well as other top leaders. The march pasts, the athletic displays by acrobats were spectacular. So was the military march past. The participants also carried huge portraits of Marx, Lenin, Stalin, and Mao. Those of us sitting in the diplomatic enclosure were provided umbrellas, and hot Chinese tea was served in the large rooms below the enclosure. However, our parliamentary delegation suffered. They felt the cold and were provided overcoats and umbrellas. The parade was, however, not witnessed by the inhabitants of Peking, as All roads leading to Tiananmen Square were blocked. Chairman Mao Zedong received the parliamentary delegation at midnight of 30th October at his residence. Mao Zedong never called on anyone. President Nixon called on him during his historic visit to China in February 1972. Mao did not return his call. No emperor in China's history had ever wielded the power Mao did. We were 15 in number. The chairman Mao and the speaker Ananthasenam Iyengar sat facing each other. The meeting lasted close to 1 hour. Ananthasenam Iyengar talked much more than Mao. I can see changes on the globe and visualize that the West is withering away. We are not bothered about the UK and Europe, but about the USA. At the moment, the USA is not afraid of China, but it is afraid of the Soviet Union. At the moment, we are far behind USA technically, and it will take us about 50 years to catch up with them. Unlike you, that is India, we have made the mistake of having a vast army of nearly 3 million, and that has hampered progress in other fields. Do you think we have too large an army? The speaker Ananthasenam Iyengar's reply was tactful and sensible. We haven't studied the military aspect, and neither have we seen any military installations. We went wherever our hosts took us. We didn't wish to embarrass them by asking them to show places that they might not like us to visit. Mao: no, we wouldn't have been embarrassed, and we have nothing to hide from you. Iyengar: our armed forces delegation that is here told me that you had not kept anything from them when you received them. They were very satisfied with their visit. Mao: I asked them the same question, but they didn't tell me if they thought that our army was too large. That is why I am asking you. Iyengar: we need to defend our territories, and that is the main purpose for having an army. India faces no dangers, but your problems are different, and as per force, you had to keep this large army. Like us, you too have a large population, and it was your manpower that saved the day in the Korean War. Mao: we want peace and development in our country. At this moment, we can produce only medium sized machinery, not big and precision machinery. This we must build. He said this in reply to the speaker's remark that India and China lead the world in handicrafts. Mao not once said that China was on top in everything. This studied modesty is typical of all Chinese leaders, and in contrast to our leaders who all the time pat themselves on the back and throw their achievements in the face of others. The Chinese tone is like, we have done little, we wish to learn from you. Mao listened with interest to all that the speaker had to say about our 5-year plan and the freedom movement. Mao said that they had been misinformed about the freedom movement in India, and it was only now that they realized that the struggle led by Gandhi and Nehru was a mass movement. I think he said this tongue in cheek. Nehru in 1954 had told him about the freedom movement. He said that they understood the works of Gandhi better today. Iyengar. Gandhi believed in soul, force, and to him, means were more important than the ends. Mao. Non-violent, non-cooperation were also struggles. Was it a philosophy of revolution? Iyengar. Your progress is so fast that you will soon catch up with us. We will go ahead together. Was Mao being polite? The popular slogan Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai was still being mouthed, or was he ignorant? Did he seriously wish to see a united India? Most certainly not. He was being disingenuous. In his discussions with Nehru in October 1954, he had not called the partition a mistake nor had spoken about a united India. On 18 September 1957, Vice President S. Radhakrishnan arrived in the Chinese capital. He was received by all the top Chinese leaders, including President Liu Shaoqao, Prime Minister Zhou Enlai, Sung Chingling, and the Mayor of Beijing, Peng Chen. Even Chairman Mao returned to Beijing a day early from a trip to receive the Vice President. Radhakrishnan called on Mao. His hand was bandaged as he had hurt his finger while getting into a car at Phom Phom. After shaking hands, Radhakrishnan patted Mao on the left cheek. Mao, as well as the other Chinese officials present, were taken aback by this unusual familiarity. However, the philosopher quickly diffused the situation by saying, Mr. Chairman, don't be alarmed. I did the same thing to Stalin and the Pope. At the banquet Mao gave for Radhakrishnan, Mao picked a piece of meat with his chopsticks and put it in the plate of his vegetarian guest. This was the ultimate act of expressing deep friendship. I watched with horror, but the Vice President dealt with this culinary outrage with extreme tact. He did not touch the meat but helped himself to a dozen vegetarian dishes. Thanks to my teacher, Dean Chang, an old Buddhist, my study of Chinese had picked up. I had become proficient enough in the language to be able to read Mao in the original. I still remember one of his dictums. When necessary, bend like a willow. When necessary, stand unbending like an oak. Zhou Enlai was the most engaging, sophisticated, and brilliant diplomat among his peers. With the passing of each year, his prestige only grew. While he only implemented the foreign policy laid down by Mao Zedong, he was nevertheless the most visible Chinese leader on the international scene. I, along with Meera Malik and Darshan Bhutia, spent 6 months learning Chinese as a day scholar at the Peking University, the best known in China as PETA. It is its name. The campus is beautiful with willow trees bending gracefully in the wind. Mao Zedong was a librarian in PETA in 1918 to 1920. PETA's alumni have the reputation of being student rebels. The last example of their rebellion was in June 1989 when they occupied Tiananmen Square and demanded the end of totalitarianism. Deng Xiaoping ruthlessly suppressed the revolt. Our classes started at 7 a.m. I drove two IFS colleagues in my Volkswagen to Pita. Not one of our teachers spoke English. The course was demanding. All three managed to pass the final examination. The Chinese students lived in overcrowded dormitories and ate while standing in the dining room as chairs were in short supply. They lived very Spartan lives and were not permitted to mix with foreign students. Our course included the writings of Chairman Mao. The great man's prose was like glue and for newcomers a challenge. A revolution is not the same as inviting people to dinner or writing an essay or painting a picture. A revolution is an insurrection, an act of violence by which one class overthrows another, he wrote in 1954. In 1938, he declared, every communist must grasp the truth. Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. It is one of his best known statements and one of the most deadly. In February 1958, I had got reasonably good marks both in the written and the oral tests for advanced Chinese. The results were sent to the School of Foreign Languages of Ministry of Defense. The director of the school asked for the qualifications and names of the Chinese examiners. Ashok Bhatkamkar, counselor in the embassy, replied, we do not know the qualifications of the examiners, but the names are Mao Tse-tung and Zhou Enlai. Thank you very much. Now some word power. The staff car deposited me at Sin Chai Hotel, where I later discovered low-level diplomats, peripatetic travelers, and several intelligence agents to keep an eye on diplomats were put up. Peripatetic, peripatetic means traveling from place to place for relatively short periods. The hotel was Spartan. Spartan, Spartan means simple and not particularly comfortable, frugal. That suited me. I was at the time a show off Puritan. Show off means display. Puritan, Puritan, Puritan means someone who believes that it is important to work hard and control yourself and that pleasure is wrong or unnecessary. I scribbled a note on the back of the menu. I am starving and cannot get my breakfast. Are you Han Suin? If so, could you help me order my breakfast? As I fretted about my impetuosity, an answer arrived. Fret. F-R-E-T, fret means worry, be anxious. Impetuosity, I-M-P-E-T-U-O-S-A-T-V. Impetuosity means the quality of doing things suddenly without considering the results of your actions. Each morning, the ambassador held an officers' meeting. Attendance was de rigueur. D-E-R-A-G-U-E-U-R. De rigueur means demanded by custom. V.V. Paranjape read out important news items from the People's Daily and Ta Kung Pao. His choice of the news items was arbitrary. A-R-B-I-T-R-A-R-Y. Arbitrary means based on random choice or personal whim rather than any reason or system. A polyglot, Pai spoke Marathi, Hindi, and English besides Chinese. Polyglot. Polyglot means a person who knows and is able to use several languages. I singled out Pi because he was an original. Single out means to choose a person or thing from a group for special attention, especially criticism or praise. I vividly recollect the first time I saw Chairman Mao Zedong. This was at a banquet for the Prime Minister of Laos. Banquet. Banquet means a sumptuous meal in an elaborated ceremony. The cost of this transformation in human terms was no doubt high, but no one had an inkling of this in the 1950s. Inkling, Inkling. Inkling means a hint. Mao was a tremendous innovator and a prophet who made Marx stand on his head. Make a person or thing stand on his or its head means to cause something such an established belief to be doubted, especially because of new information or discoveries. H.K. Malaviya, a senior member of the delegation, was impressed with Mao's China. According to him, the change that had been wrought about in the very humanity of China by Mao was nothing short of a remarkable. WROUGHT, wrought means made or done in a careful or decorative way. According to him, in China, they did not allow grass to grow under one's feet, even though they did not mind that the grass grew on people's roofs. In India, Malaviya observed grass was allowed to grow all over the place. Did not allow to grow grass under feet means to not waste time or to not delay doing something. The contrast between Mao and Sukarno was stark. While Mao was indifferent to sartorial elegance, Sukarno needed frills to impress. SARTORIAL, sartorial means related to tailoring, clothes, or stylish dress. I think he said this tongue in cheek. Nehru in 1954 had told him about the freedom movement. Tongue in cheek means an ironic, flippant way. Did he seriously wish to see a united India? Most certainly not. He was being disingenuous. Disingenuous means not candid or sincere. The last example of their rebellion was in June 1989 when they occupied Tiananmen Square and demanded the end of totalitarianism. Totalitarianism. Totalitarianism means a system of government that is centralized and dictatorial. Thank you for listening.